Are stepping up to the challenges and opportunities of inclusive and resilient development, working with their municipalities, with their communities, and with their citizens. On a personal level, after working with many local governments around the world, I learned so much about the importance of being close to the community. Disasters may affect a country or even a region, but they are always experienced locally. I also learned about the unique opportunity that citizens have to influence in a positive way public policy at the local government level. And it's just no wonder that there are so many interesting citizen participation frameworks that were born and conceived at the local government level. And I've also learned that local cities and local governments are the fastest to react to problems, to come up with solutions and with innovation. And that we need that innovation more than ever to address humanity's biggest problems. Local leaders from around the world, let me tell you that we admire the work that you do, and that we are very much looking forward to learning a lot from your presentations and the discussion today. So it is my pleasure to introduce now to our speakers for the official opening of this local leaders forum. And I would like to invite the Deputy for System and Strategy of the Indonesian National Board for Disaster Management, BNPB, Dr. Raditya. Dr. Raditya, please.
Om Swastiastu, good afternoon, and also may peace upon us, distinguished guests. Over here, I would like to say to my friend, Mr. Ricardo Mena, from the UNDR Director, and then Mr. Gino from the Secretary General of the ICLEI, and then Mr. Dr. Bernardia Irawati, Secretary General for UCLG ASPAC, and of course, other colleagues, distinguished guests, mayors, local leaders, now attending on this special session that we are welcoming for the local leaders towards inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable cities. So I would like to, it's an honor to welcome you all in the island of Bali, the island of God, for the critical event that is now we are here. I hope you have already had a chance, even though special time to walk around and enjoy the beautiful island of Bali and the scenery and also the culture. If you don't have the time now, then we will have the time at the end of the TB, in the 28th, we will have a cultural event that participant delegates may also visit some beautiful place in Bali. And also, ladies and gentlemen, over these past 2 years, the COVID-19 has already transformed our world from something we thought we knew into an unprecedented, and unthinkable one. We are forced to adapt to the new reality that the business as usual approach to reducing disaster risk is no longer potent. Neither short-term policies nor isolated governance will be helpful. We must continuously broaden our horizon to find the most innovative, integrated, and sustainable ways to build the skills in our home region. And I could not think of any other platform than this local leaders forum and the NCR on making citizens 2030 initiative to achieve that purpose. Distinguished participants, to give you the content of Indonesia, 42% of the total 514 cities and regencies in the countries are at high risk of disaster. Meanwhile, according to the 2021 Indonesian Disaster Resilience, or we call it ICLEI, the remaining are the categorization as having medium exposure risk. Therefore, strengthening resilience is not an option for us, but an indispensable responsibility. For that, Indonesia has already rolled out the long-term disaster management master plan, what we call it the REPD or IPD, the 2020 to 2044. This is advancing the country to be a resilient nation by 2045. Indonesia has also formulated the minimum services standard for the disaster management of the municipality level since 2018, and also we have been also included and integrated into the national plan and also the local plan for disaster risk management. Distinguished participant, it is indeed that no single solution fits all contexts. Every social capital and local wisdom matter to complement the technology and scientific advancement we already have in the case of Indonesia. We have hundreds of thousands of local practices that we are glad to share with you. One of them is the Trihita Karana, the long-standing Balinese way of life that balances the respect of the God, people, and the nature. I will not disclose any further detail about it because later you will have to have the governor and of Bali and other paragons of the country speaks to about this matter. Moreover, I am sure that our Indonesian colleagues here are also experienced to learn from all of in achieving sustainable resilience. Having said that, I would like to conclude my remarks by wishing you all a fruitful and substantive discussion. Hopefully, we can also produce something concrete from here and bring all the best for DRR practice available at home. I thank you, and I will give back to the MC. Om Santi 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 Om. Namo Buddhaya, and very good afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Raditya, for your remarks and presentation. And let me just present the next speaker. I would like now to invite the Director of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, Mr. Ricardo Mena, to make his remarks. Mr. Mena, please.
Thank you very much, and I'm really honored to be here with you. I want to first say a few words to our co-participants in this opening. First, Dr. Yati, my good friend and representative of the host government of the Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction in Indonesia. Also, Secretary General of United Cities and Local Governments, Dr. Bernardia Dinawati, and Secretary General of Local Governments for Sustainability, ICLEI, Mr. Gino van Benin. Mayors and local leaders from around the world, and all distinguished delegates and participants at the Local Leaders Forum ahead of the Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction that we all look forward to beginning next Wednesday. In particular, I would like to offer a very warm welcome to all our local government representatives and their partners from here in Bali and across Indonesia, as well as local leaders and officials from many municipalities and cities from all over the world. It's wonderful to see you all here today. It is my pleasure to be speaking to you today on behalf of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction and all Making Cities Resilient 2030 partners that are with us. Thank you for this opportunity to make these remarks ahead of what promises to be a fully and interesting afternoon of discussion under the theme towards inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable cities. I am so pleased to see that the focus of your discussions this afternoon will be on how to scale up our progress against the Sustainable Development Goals. This morning I was just speaking at one of the sessions, specifically the Multi-Hazard Early Warning Systems Conference, and we were looking at the implementation of Target G of the Sendai Framework. As you know, it's the access to early warning systems. And I was really impressed by the fact that when looking at how cities are progressing in terms of achieving Target G, it is still a low percentage of cities around the world that is reporting as being having in place these early warning systems. So it is very important for us that the localization of the Sendai Framework for disaster risk reduction and the Sustainable Development Goals are one of our priorities. By most measures, it is clear that we are way behind in the kind of progress needed to achieve the overall 2030 agenda for sustainable development. Last month, we launched our global assessment report on the state of disaster risk in the world, entitled Our World at Risk, Transforming Governance for a Resilient Future. It highlights the gap, as we know it, how local and national governments have the opportunity to make a decisive shift toward disaster prevention. And let me share just two examples of what I mentioned. First, local and national governments that plan their critical infrastructure in a way that incorporates projected climate risk, what we know as climate risk scenarios, can better protect their power, water, and transport supplies, as well as their schools and hospitals in this era of escalating climate risk. Second example, local and national governments that revise their local budget planning to consider risk and uncertainty and reconfigure legal and financial systems to incentivize risk reduction can avoid significant future losses associated with disasters. And really the business case for disaster risk reduction has been proven over and over again. And yet, unfortunately, the amount of resources that are being dedicated to disaster risk reduction are still quite negligible. This represents a huge opportunity and a huge potential for the resilience dividend, and is why UNDRR, along with all our partners, last year launched the MCR 2030 initiative. This is our global collaboration, now in its second year, is growing strongly with over 1,080 member cities, as well as more than 200 service providers from around the world working in partnership on this critical agenda. So, your discussions today will focus on how the Sendai Framework for disaster risk reduction contributes to the wider Agenda 2030 for sustainable development, are indeed an opportunity to ensure that the voice and experience of the municipalities and cities positively influence the global policy agenda. And we know that it is precisely local governments who are facing the brunt of the problems, but also the ones that have the solutions directly at hand. So, on behalf of UNDRR, I would like to reiterate our continued commitment and support to strengthening the DRR agenda at the local level. And I thank you again for your ongoing support to the MCR 2030 initiative and also to all our partners, and for your active engagement today and at the wider global platform while we had it here in Bali. And we have made all efforts to ensure that local government voices are represented in regular representation of the global platform, as I said, starting recently. So I wish you fruitful and productive afternoon today and deliberations, and I want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mena, for your presentation and remarks, and I would like now to invite the Asia Pacific Secretary General for the United States and Local Governments, UCLG, Dr. Raditya, to make a remark. Dr. Emilia.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu. Selamat siang. Kami diminta untuk menyampaikan speech ini dalam bahasa Inggris. Mohon izinkan kami menyampaikan dalam bahasa Inggris. Good afternoon, Om Swastiastu. Let me greet my dear friend Pak Raditya. Selamat siang. Also Pak Ricardo Mena from UNDRR. And of course, my dear colleagues, Gino from ICLEI, and all distinguished mayors and governors. I'm so happy that we have so many mayors. We have a lady mayor from Gambia, also from Congo, and also from Indonesia. So many lady mayors here, and of course from Bangladesh. I think it's always very nice to meet women mayors. Of course, it's also happy to meet male mayors as well. We have a mayor from Bhutan, from Kalimantan here. I'm here representing these global networks and also UCLG Secretary General. I really like to welcome everyone to this important forum. I call it important because I think everyone knows the important role that local governments have in disaster risk reduction. So this global meeting is the first event after we met in 2019 in Geneva. And we are still having COVID, but I'm so happy that we can meet face to face despite this pandemic. And we are still in good spirits as before. The COVID-19 pandemic has taught us clearly that local governments are at the forefront of disaster risk reductions. We close the community, so when disaster strikes, it requires local authorities to take actions, quick actions, as the first line of response. So local governments have certainly important role to prevent. It's not only just to react, but to prevent and reduce vulnerability and protect the community. So we recall the adoption of Sendai Framework for actions for disaster risk reduction in 2015. So, and local governments have contributed to a reduction of disaster risk and have demonstrated great commitment. I will tell later on what great commitment really means to involving communities in resilience and development. So many cities and local governments around the world have established what we call it local disaster risk strategies that are in line with national strategies. So for the specific target E, I hope everybody knows what the target E is. The percentage of local governments that have adopted and implemented local disaster risk reduction strategies has increased from 54% in 2015 to 65% in 2021. This is showing a very positive sign. But at the same time, disasters happening at the global level, especially in this Asia Pacific region, including losses, continue to rise at high level. Local governments are facing what I call it as a new challenges because it's just complex. Of these new emergencies that come with critical social and economic implications. So in this context, the need for coherence and synergy with the other global agendas like the Sustainable Development Goals, the New Urban Agenda, as well as Paris Agreement, this is crucial more than before. So SDGs is important to have a much clear multi-level governance system or mechanisms. So we need for local governments, I think Gambia Mayor, you will also agree with me, we need to have a conducive environment to build resilient cities and society. So it will depend very much on support mechanism given to cities and local governments, given to regional governments. So these include regulations, institutional strengthenings, and most important as well is access to funding. And we know that local governments have so much limitations with regards to funds. So this week's event is actually an opportunity for us, for everyone, and time to move from commitments to real actions, real urgent actions. Of course, we are making already so many actions, but what we need is now much urgent action. So we need to have a better plans and, of course, finance to improve early warning systems and build resilience infrastructure. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving from risk to resilience has been a key priority for UCLG. I'm here representing UCLG for many years. In the Sendai declarations of local and sub-national governments, we committed to advance the implementation and the promotion of local disasters risk reduction strategies and plans. So in that sense, UCLG and our regional sections, including Asia Pacific, have supported many local governments, cities and regions through peer learning and also have produced resilient learning modules, and this coded by with the UNDR and UNHABITAT. Of course, we are also dealing with advocacy as well, not just learning. As a co-chair, UCLG has actively promoted the new platform of the Making Cities Resilient, MCR 2030. I'm sure all cities and local governments that are present here, you're already part of this Making Cities Resilience to raise awareness and foster a strategic approach to resilience. We also encourage our members, UCLG connects actually more than 240,000 in more than 140 countries. So we encourage our members to join the online dashboard of MCR 2030 and link to the network which will support the needs of local governments in achieving the goals and strategies. As of today, there are 1,084 cities and local government joined already MCR 2030 online. That's what globally. And for 434 cities and local governments are identified at the stage A. If you ask me what the stage A is, stage A is understanding of risk reduction and resilience. And there are 264 cities are in the stage B. Disaster risk reduction and resilience strategy. The cities that already have a disaster risk reduction and resilience strategy. And there are 387 in the stage C, implementation of risk reduction and resilience action. I really hope that all those 400 cities and more will be reaching a stage C. So I really like to invite all of you, mayors and governors who are joining the MCR 2030 to quickly apply for these online dashboards. So I'd like to conclude my remarks by saying this year Asia Pacific is playing an important role in hosting two global platforms. One, of course, is here, the GPRDR that we are having today in Bali. And next is the Asia Pacific Ministerial Conference on DRR that will be held in Brisbane, Australia in September. I'd like to thank the government of Indonesia for organizing this wonderful GPDRR. I think they are having so many expectations of this GPDRR. And of course the government of Australia for MCR this September. So let me say let's us together accelerate the achievement of Sendai Framework on DRR. We have only 7 years. I don't know if you think that 7 years are too far or too close, but for me, 7 years are too close. So to reach this 2030. But I trust we all are very, very confident and optimistic that we can reach our commitments for our people, for the people prosperity, because the people cannot do it, the actions come from the governments. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good Guru and to stay in Bali. Om Santi Santi Om. Thank you. Terima kasih.
speech today is a pre-recorded message, video message, from the Secretary General of Local Governments for Sustainability, Mr. Gino. Can we play the video, please?
Your Excellencies, Honorable Governor, dear Mami and esteemed colleagues from the UNDRR, dear Emilia, ladies and gentlemen, I would very much like to thank UNDRR for inviting ICLEI to provide opening remarks at this Local Leaders Forum in advance of the 7th session of the Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction in Bali. In its latest report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, is explicit that an unprecedented rate of global warming is induced by human activity, and that the global surface temperature will indeed continue to increase until at least the mid-century, irrespective of emission scenarios considered. Global warming will exceed the 1.5 if not the 2 degrees Celsius rise in average temperature during the 21st century, unless drastic reductions in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions occur in the coming decades. While all efforts must focus on keeping our planet in habitable boundaries, the current crisis of a global pandemic, of war, inflation, and the increase of food and energy price demands us to respond in an integrated and interconnected manner. This new reality exacerbates the vulnerabilities of social and economic structures. The sharp inequalities of our communities become very visible like never before. It is challenging to find comprehensive solutions that are geared to enhance the sustainability of humankind and our planet. In these times, the role of local and regional governments is more important than ever to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. As local leaders, we must take this responsibility. We must make the right choices now, and we must keep the right path. The choices we make now will determine if we are able or not to accelerate the transformation of humankind from a fossil fuel-based, extraction-intensive, capital-oriented model of the past centuries into a new, peaceful, renewable, resilient, nature-based oriented model that strives to respect the limits of the planet. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction is one important part of departure for thousands of local and regional governments to build their communities safe, inclusive, and resilient against the rising impacts of climate change in the form of catastrophic events. In this light, the Making Cities Resilient 2030 campaign, the NCR 2030 campaign, is creating a huge momentum across different levels of governance to scale up the hard-earned achievements of the Sendai Framework implementation. Since its launch at BNPB 2020, ICLEI is honored to be a core partner of the NCR 2030. Through our regional offices in Asia, in Europe, in Africa, Oceania, and in Latin America, we lead regional NCR 2030 actions in different capacities and motivate our member cities to join this initiative. In this function, ICLEI is very much committed to push the boundaries of locally led actions and to turn cities from vulnerable hotspots into resilient hubs. A prominent example of this is the Free City of Recife, one of the most vulnerable cities in the world, which became the first city to sign up to our new urban infrastructure insurance facility. Through this new facility, we will support municipal governments to protect critical urban infrastructure and vulnerable populations from natural disasters that are caused by extreme climate events. As a hub of the NCR 2030 campaign, the speaker will be able to share this experience with fellow cities in this campaign. Ladies and gentlemen, we can only achieve the needed transformation if we all come together and work with one another to increase our joint resilience towards the current and future crises. I hope that our deliberations Thank you very much, and all regards from home.
So thank you very much, Mr. Bandelli, and all of our speakers today for setting us up so well for the discussion that we're having. And now we will move to the first substantive session of the Local Leaders Forum, which we call Yes We Can, Sustainable Development Goals in Action at the Municipality Daily Session. So we will feature 5 case studies that illustrate how the Sendai Framework is supporting local governments in making progress against 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals. In particular, number 1, no poverty; number 3, good health and well-being; number 11, sustainable cities and communities; and number 13, climate action. I would like to invite now our 5 speakers to please join me on the stage. The head of the Global Facility for Disaster Risk Reduction and Recovery, Mr. Niels Nielsen, who will speak about SDG number 1, no poverty. The head of Disaster and Crisis Risk Management Unit, Saiz, Lebanon, Mr. Mustafa Hayassi, who will speak about SDG number 3, good health and well-being. The mayor of Quelimane City in Mozambique, Mr. Manuel Araujo, who will speak about SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. The Assistant Commissioner of Ministry of Land, Housing and Urban Development in Uganda, Ms. Martha Mugarura, who will also speak about SDG number 11. And our representative from LCR 2030, Resilient South Medellin, Colombia, Mr. John Walter Perez, who will speak about SDG 11 and 13 on climate action. So please, if you can join me on stage, and a big applause for all of you. So we're ready to go. Welcome to the stage. And I will pass the floor now to Mr. Niels Nielsen, who will speak about SDG number 1, no poverty.
Afternoon, everyone. It's a bit daunting and fantastic at the same time.
Sounds like we have a technology issue here. Thank you. It's a bit daunting and fantastic at the same time to finally be live. Like I suppose most of you, if not all of you, have been stuck behind the computer screen for 2 years. And it really is a pleasure to see all the humans in flesh and blood. For the same reason, I have not actually done a presentation. I was asked to speak about SDG 1, elimination of poverty. And I'm wondering, what can I say to a room full of city leaders about elimination of poverty? I work for the World Bank. Our institutional mission is to eliminate poverty. So for that reason, I suppose I was asked to speak to the topic. We are a bank. We work with governments around the world. We finance development projects. We deliver technical assistance. So I'm talking from the perspective, that institutional perspective now. The world is urbanizing. I suppose I don't need to tell all of you that. The numbers are staggering in a sense in parts of the world. In Africa, I suppose we'll hear a bit more about that. In South Asia, urbanization is happening really, really fast. Today, more than half of the population of our planet is in cities. Very soon, it's going to be maybe 70%. That also means that an increasing amount of the poor in the world live in cities. So the demographic shift is changing where poverty is located. That also means institutions like mine, governments like yours, local governments, need to change and start to change focus on poverty reduction. Now, these demographic shifts does something else. It does something to risk. Risk is changing. When people and assets concentrate in cities, that means risk also concentrates in cities. So an institution like mine, we literally cannot achieve our institutional goal unless we become, in my mind, a much better partner to city leaders like you all. I work for part of the World Bank that's called the Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery. In our unit, now part of the institution, we use our global position to try to gather as much knowledge and experience as we can through the World Bank's engagements across cities around the world. The World Bank probably works with at least 500 cities in a given year. And gather information around what works and what doesn't work when it comes to disaster risk management. So, from this perspective, what are some of the things that cities around the world ask us to help with? I think a common, and I'll try to organize it in 3 key pieces. The common denominator is actionable information. Because the demographic change happens fast, even understanding where people live, or how many people there are, which is a key piece of information for risk, as I mentioned earlier, but also for anything service delivery, of course, at a local level. Understanding where people are and where the poor people are is a key piece of information. Most local governments have access, of course, to census information, but most census information is at least 5 years old, and a lot of it is more than 10 or 15 years old. If your city is expanding by 5% a year, which is the case in large parts of Africa, some communities, some local areas of the city are expanding by 20% a year, even 5-year-old census information is almost an order of magnitude out of whack. It's very hard, of course, to generate good policy, good actions, good investments on that basis. So information gathering is a key piece of what we have to do. It's not only about the people, it can be about the assets, it can be about the natural assets, the trees. So for instance, we try to help cities work with local communities in cities to generate, using modern technology, machine learning, information gathered from above, the satellites constantly gets better. So using modern technology and local knowledge to generate information that city leadership can take action on. An example is a project that we're supporting in Sierra Leone, the capital Freetown, where the city mayor decided that it's important to green the city. Greening is also very important for flood risk management in the urban space and for landslide risk management in Freetown. Many of you may recall that Freetown had a very large landslide a few years ago, and unfortunately caused the loss of life of 1,100 people. So in that city, we have helped create 500 short-term jobs. Helped the mayor create 500 short-term jobs using cell phones to define locally basically where the trees are and how they're growing. But combining this with satellite imagery from the top, that gives the city at a macro level, at a city level, city scale, an opportunity to understand how many trees are there and how they're growing. And now there's more than 1 million trees that have been planted. These are significant numbers. So that's just one example. Another example, also related to trees from Dar es Salaam, where we're working with local universities to, again, generate an ability through the local youth of understanding where the trees are. Dar es Salaam, as many cities that we work with, don't have a baseline, don't have an understanding of where they're starting. Therefore, it's hard to figure out how to manage the process of moving forward. You don't know where you're starting from. So creating a baseline map with the help of the local universities, and at the same time creating skills in one of the fastest growing digital markets, which is about the attributes, interpretation of imagery. That then, of course, may help create other opportunities to say locally. Now, another area where we often get, in addition to information, actionable information, I think I was calling it, another area is, of course, risk reduction. So what are some of the things that cities can do? And the city leadership that is often the ones that sit in dialogue with us, they ask us things like, okay, I'm interested in greening. How do we go about it? What are our opportunities? So we try to offer quick and relatively cheap information that can enable the definition of where it would be possible, or potentially possible, to use nature as part of your risk management strategy. So we're working with the city of Colombo on restoring wetlands that serves as a sponge, basically. We're working with key Kigali about the same thing, working on wetlands. We're working with, have been working with the city of Bogota for years, managing urban floods through urban greenery, urban parks. We're working with the city of Beira in Mozambique, also on an urban park, transforming Limani River into a space that's something that people want to visit, that has economic value, that has a value for the city, for the heart of the city itself, but at the same time serves as a flood retention capacity in the middle of the city. So that kind of risk reduction is often what city leaders want from us. But of course, there's a lot of risk reduction value in the forward look. The 60% of the assets, the buildings, the roads, the bridges that we are going to live with and in 10 years from now hasn't been built yet. Most of that will be built in cities. 60%. It's a lot. Anything we, from our international position, a relevant institution like the one I work for, can do to help enable local governments better plan the location and the quality that they use to build will have probably the largest possible impact on disaster risk for the world that we will be living in 10 years from now, of any action that we can take. The final part that we are often asked to help with is support related to recovery processes. Disasters, of course, unfortunately continue to happen and will continue to happen for another great while. And what we, again, the data part is important, but we get asked to help with some of the softer stuff as well. We've been helping the local governments integrate gender into the planning process. Gender-based violence is a problem generally, unfortunately, often related to infrastructure investments, but that problem often becomes accentuated in recovery processes where things need to happen fast, where conditions change, where that puts some people into more vulnerable circumstances, positions, and having appropriate involvement of all genders in the process is a key part of recovery planning processes. It creates better and more sustainable recovery. So as you can tell from some of these examples, it's city leaders like you all that have really the key to poverty reduction. We're not going to achieve SDG 1 without the great work of cities of the world, and of course, therefore, not without the great leaders of these same cities. So these are some of the thoughts that I had, and I will pass the microphone back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Mustafa Kiyasi, who will talk about SDG number 3, with health and well-being.
My name is Mustafa Kiyasi. I come from Saiz, Lebanon, far away from here. Many people watching us here. I would like to talk a little bit about the current situation in Lebanon before starting with the British soldier. In recent years, Lebanese cities and villages have been subjected to a set of crises and disasters, which have had a very large negative impact on the local economy, affecting all related humanitarian and socio-economic aspects. As a result of the successive events and crises, the role of municipalities has become essential in responding and coordinating with all local components to address health and economic crises, especially as it is the local authority that is closest to the citizens and most familiar with the local reality and needs. The health sector was one of the most affected, directly or indirectly, by most of the crises that toppled local and national institutions in terms of availability to respond, in terms of availability of human, medical, and logistical resources. Next slide, please. The one before, please. Yes. In light of this, the DRMC unit, Disaster Risk Management Unit, or Saiz is in the south of Lebanon, was established with a complete administrative structure consisting of planning, response, and resources groups in cooperation with local NGOs and non-NGOs supported by a team of 35 volunteers. The DRM unit has the following major roles: managing, planning, and coordinating interventions and recovery, crisis, and disasters, in addition to acting as a communication center for management of fields, operation, information, and media relations. Next slide, please. Confronting the pandemic, the COVID-19. Next, please. The DRM unit led the efforts in confronting the COVID-19 through multi-sectorial interventions by capacity building and trainings in partnership with all stakeholders, bridging health professionals and community leaders while engaging the private sector and religious leaders in supporting community institutions through disseminating tools and messages. Some of these actions were communicating with positive cases and creating necessary database, leading and monitoring mobilization of support needs, public areas and building sanitization, channeling aid to quarantine families in cooperation with NGOs, transport, wash, and barrier of disease cases, weekly reporting of COVID-19 cases, awareness sessions on safety measures, organizing the project of free PCR tests with among PH's Ministry of Public Health in Lebanon, immediate relief of vulnerable families through distribution of food coupons, which we will talk about, communicate with hospitals to confirm cases, deaths, and secure hospital admissions for need. Next, please. Established during the COVID-19 crisis, the management committee role was to follow up on local COVID-19 status and setting local preventive policies, support local private and governmental hospitals, provide vaccination research and technical support. In its weekly meetings, the committee played a major role in monitoring epidemiological status, propose and coordinate necessary preventive actions, draft evidence-based policies, and medical and technical support. In addition to coordinating with all stakeholders and medical sectors such as ministries, NGOs, and security agencies. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, 3 direct responses were initiated by the DRM unit. Preventive measures through raising awareness, immediate response and interventions, managing vaccination centers in cooperation with MOPH and NGOs and NGOs. Next, please. As mentioned earlier, awareness sessions were conducted at 2 phases. Phase 1, pre-lockdown, when main measures were being taken to avoid the spread. Phase 2, post-lockdown, when measures were being eased for business and schools and different entities. As a result of these 2 phases, 110 sessions were conducted, with 2,500 attendees were trained for 107 different entities, in particular private and public arms, NGOs, nurseries, schools, and universities, while communicating with around 13,000 infected cases within the Federation. After conducting a survey and evaluation of the nursing body in the Federation, in partnership with the Syndicate of Nurses in Lebanon, a home care system was initiated by providing medical training for about 128 volunteers. Next. Monitoring system was put in place in coordination with the epidemiological surveillance team to display and track the spread of COVID-19 cases using collected data and GIS system to produce heat map for the Federation, in addition to the location of all medical facilities within the Federation as hospitals, ambulances, preliminary care centers, first responders team, pharmacists, etc. Next slide. Moreover, the DRM unit issued a weekly public report to communicate epidemiological reality, indicating collected data at the level of Federation using geographical representation showing weekly and cumulative number of cases for the following: newly infected cases, recovered cases, death cases, total conducted PCR tests on local and national level, distribution of infected cases according to age groups, common symptom percentage, in addition to providing specific and general instructions. These are the actual reports. Sorry, it's in Arabic because it was distributed at the time Arabic. Next slide, please. Through immediate interventions in partnership with NGOs, the DRM unit worked on providing infection prevention control kits, approximately 7,000 units, providing hot meals and food aid for 1,400 quarantine families, providing over 20 respirators for home care use with technical and logistical support, in addition to other services reaching around 100,000 beneficiaries. Next slide, please. The municipality of Saiz allocated almost 3 billion Lebanese pounds as immediate relief for vulnerable families affected by such measures. Families had to register through a link provided by the municipality, which led to the registration of around 20,000 beneficiaries. The aid distribution process occurred through coordination with 8 local NGOs and the contract of several local supermarkets and grocery shops. The following maps of coupon distribution initiatives show the density of this distribution. The 20,000 coupons distributed expose the vulnerability of certain areas in the city and the importance of creating interventions that mitigate potential and actual risks occurring with them. We also created a diverse database for the registrant, where we have around 20,000 residents of different nationalities, from which is 64% Lebanese, 28% Palestinians, 21% Syrians. We also examined their marital status, where we realized that 21% of beneficiaries are either widowers or divorced. This signifies the increased vulnerability of these households. Next. Furthermore, the Crisis Management Committee contributed to funding and supporting Saiz Governmental Hospital with over $500,000 in cash and in-kind sponsorship, covering the cost of liquid oxygen for special care units such as ICU, CCU, ER, sterilization of cleaning materials, food supply, PCR kits, and radiology fields. Next slide, please. Free PCR. Efforts led by the unit managed to secure free PCR tests in the municipal stadium for local community in partnership with the Ministry of Public Health and the medical staff of local NGOs, in addition to reporting the result through SMS system and follow-up on the positive quarantine case. More than 26,000 tests were conducted. The DRI unit supported and assisted site vaccination centers through providing them with human resources and volunteers in cooperation with NGOs, verified registration on MOPH platform upon arrival for vaccination, registration for work in places, launching a community health platform with a call center registering and collecting data on health, profession, household, and age information, and sharing it with MOPH to facilitate vaccination process. Providing more than 2,400 patients with necessary medications such as remdesivir that was used there. Next slide, please. The DRM unit launched a big vaccination campaign encouraging people to get vaccinated while posting on billboards and disseminating flyers on vaccine safety and communicating such info over all types of media. Go further? Yes. Next, please. Next. Yes. Based on the cumulative experience the DRM unit has gained during confronting the pandemic and with the support of UNDRR, Hariri Foundation, with the National DRM unit, a project was implemented aiming at assessing and evaluating the health resilience in the Federation, develop and implement training package on MCR health addendum, develop public health resilience action plan in line with the local resilience plan. Throughout the process, several training sessions and meetings were organized with all the health sector stakeholders and entities. As a result of assessing local public health system resilience and the public health addendum mainstream and fit using the UNDRR tool, this had defined the following priority areas: networking and enhancing infrastructure, empowering institutions and supporting individuals, enhancing preparedness and community management. An action plan was developed based on MCR 10 sessions containing 40 actions. Next. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dayasi. And now I'd like to pass the floor to Mayor Manuel Araujo, who will be talking about SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities.
Thank you very, very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, partners. It's really a great pleasure to me to be here today. My name is Manuel Araujo, and I'm the mayor of the fourth biggest city in Mozambique, Quelimane City. Quelimane is a seaport city. Therefore, it's one of the most vulnerable cities, not only in Mozambique, but in the African continent, but also in the world. But I'm also delighted to address you in my capacity as a member of the Global Executive Committee, ICLEI, local governments for sustainability, a global network of more than 2,500 towns and regions in more than 130 countries. Gino, my Secretary General, just spoke, giving his introductory remarks. My city of Kilimani has 600,000 inhabitants. It is the political, administrative, and economic capital of Zambezia province, the second biggest province in Mozambique, with about 6 million inhabitants, but also the second biggest in terms of territory. Ladies and gentlemen, the Global South as a whole is vulnerable due to its high exposure and low adaptive capacity. The recent UN State of the Climate in Africa report, for example, shows that there are an increasing climate change threats for human health, food, water security, and socio-economic developments in Africa due to climate hazards such as increasing temperatures and sea levels, changing precipitation patterns, and more extreme events. Just in this year, my city was affected by no less than 4 cyclones. So, basically, when it comes to climate change, the Global South is in the heart of the storm. 650 million people in urban areas will face water scarcity in the coming years. The impacts will hit the most vulnerable the hardest and contribute towards food insecurity, population displacement, and increasing distress on water resources, which affect important economic sectors such as health, energy, and waste. I'm coming from the Afri-Cities Summit in Kisumu, Kenya, where several cities in Africa showcase what they are facing on their daily lives. But more specifically, cities have been faced with significant challenges related to 2 crises over the past year: the COVID-19 pandemic and the increasingly frequent and intense impacts of climate change. As the World Bank official mentioned here, the city of Beira was hit by Cyclone Idai quite recently, and 90% of its infrastructure was destroyed. 4 to 5 months later, Mozambique was also hit by the Kenneth cyclone. The city of Pemba was half destroyed. A month ago, we had Cyclone Kombe, and I will continue on. Not only the frequency is increasing, but also the intensity. And as mentioned, Kilimani is particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, specifically flooding and erosion. Building local resilience is therefore a high priority for myself and for my administration. This has presented new and unusual challenges for cities, and highlighted once again the need for urgent and collective action. I acknowledge the critical role local governments play in the achievement of SDG 11 to make cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Just to give the example of the city of Beira, when Cyclone Idai hit that city, for more than 4 years, nobody would reach Beira or would leave Beira. No international community, no national or regional community. The mayor of Beira had to take this challenge into his hands, of course, with his staff. And for 4 days, without water running, without electricity, without being able to use his phone, without being able of using the resources that he had kept aside in banks and so on, because the banking system wasn't working, he had to keep his city alive. This, I think, is one of the examples that shows that really we mayors and local government officials, we are on the first line, we are on the forefront, and as such, we need the support of institutions like the World Bank, the UN, and other institutions to support, to train, and to make available the existing resources. With 3 of the SDG 11 targets directly contributing to Target E of the Sendai Framework, we are building collective action and complementarity, which is critical given the cross-cutting nature of the SDGs. If we examine just 3 of the targets for SDG 11, we see that they're actively contributing to the Sendai Framework. Target 11.9 seeks to implement policies for inclusion, resource efficiency, and disaster risk reduction. Target 11.5 refuse the adverse effects of natural disasters, and target 11.8 support strong national and regional development planning. A definitive mechanism to support cities in contributing to the achievement of SDG 11 targets and indicators, and the complementarity indicators of Target E of the Sendai Framework is the Making Cities Resilient, which was mentioned here, MCR 2030 initiative. Under my leadership as the mayor of Quelimane, we have joined cities globally in the MCR 2030 initiative led by UNDRR and supported by a number of core partnerships, including ICLEI, which is also completely in line with our covenant of mayors Sub-Saharan Africa and cities race to resilience commitment, and further supported by this initiative. In the current, actually, it ended on Saturday, Afro-Cities Summit in Kisumu, Kenya. Due to its commitment to these challenges, Quelimane City was elected as a regional member for the Sub-Saharan region of the Covenant of Mayors. These voluntary opportunities arise in the ambition of our current climate change adaptation actions, and also their accelerating implementation by using climate change knowledge and scientific evidence for decision making, outlining interim targets and milestones, while it's also showcasing ambition action at a global level in the run up to COP27. The 2 overarching objectives of MCR 2030 are aligned with the indicators of SDG 11. Therefore, by moving along resilience journey under MCR 2030, we are also contributing to the SDG 11 targets. The MCR 2030 understands that each city is unique and therefore supports cities to start journey at the most relevant entry point for the city. The dashboard provides the opportunity to profile progress, benchmark against cities, and to profile achievements and milestones. It further provides a resource center with access to support tools from all partners to further support cities in both the development of local GDR strategies, baseline assessment. To finalize, allow me to mention and to underline that there is no one-size-fits-all, and each city has its own unique journey. And while there are many initiatives supporting local resilience, there is great complementarity. Ultimately, a systemic joint-up approach to reduction allows national governments to proactively plan in a coordinated manner for the benefit of all citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Araujo. And now let me introduce you to Assistant Commissioner Ms. Moderator, who will be talking about SDG 11.
Good afternoon to you all. My name is Martha, and I have been introduced. I work in the Ministry of Land, Housing and Urban Development in Uganda. Uganda has one capital city, but recently elevated 10 new regional cities to the status of a city. It's not by name, as it seems to many, but it is going to have to work its way up to the standards of the cities. So when we talk about the issues that have been discussed today, I'm very confident that cities have their place in this discussion, because disaster knows no creed, knows no tribe, knows no level of economic relationship. It doesn't know how far long you've been the major city or the smallest city. It strikes when it strikes. But we have many people resident in these cities, even though they were previously small cities. They are going to grow, and we need to plan to manage risk in those cities. In Uganda, we have an estimated urban population of 11.4 million. But 6 years ago, it was only estimated at 7.4 million residents. That means we have leaped 65% in just under 10 years. We can expect more after this status has been granted, that people will be more attracted to these 10 regional cities, therefore increasing the vulnerability of people in the cities because of the increased concentrations, and also the assets, the economic and physical assets in these areas. So we are now starting a discussion on risk, and I'm passionate about it because I experienced a water crisis in one of the cities. I was left to take a bath with that small bottle of water. And it was so difficult for me to understand why the hotel had not planned for water reservoirs. They said, no, we wait until 3 a.m. in the morning, and then we open the taps and hope that the water will come flowing, because that's when the national water will release the water on ration basis. And I took it upon myself to start this song of risk planning. How can a city be water stressed? And yet we expect industrialization, we expect housing to take place in this locus, we expect transportation, we need public health and sanitation, we need schools, but there was only one bottle available, not even an extra container. They hadn't anticipated the loss of water in the pipe system. So when this happened to me, I said it must be happening to so many people, but we are not talking about it. And to our leaders, it is something that is stressing the people. Maybe that's why they are not as productive as they should be, because they worry about basic elements like water, sanitation in the cities. So it is a survival mode, it's not a productive mode. And so I call upon the leaders here today to listen to the technocrats, that we need to start planning for the risks in these urban spaces, especially in my context. It is very important that as we drive the urbanization agenda, we drive the industrialization sector, we need to manage what would happen if we do not have these resources. So as we started that journey, I came across the conference of mayors through our capital city, and one of the provisions they had was to bring on board the local cities or the secondary cities. And at that time, the transition between the cities being municipalities and now becoming regional cities was just starting to take shape. And so we pressed hard for a city field visit to bring on board what we now call the Uganda Cities for Resilience Network, to formulate it through the commitment of the political leaders, to drive the agenda for resilience in the cities. This was done in 2019, and unfortunately we then broke into the COVID-19 pandemic, and then the issues about the risks that were imminent in these cities started to manifest themselves. We couldn't access informal settlements to provide food because everybody who was really affected in the cities where the lockdown was the heaviest could not be reached by the emergency unit. Lebanon is doing well because it's really organized, but it came to us as a reaction. So we couldn't find ambulances to go into the informal settlements. They couldn't distribute food. Food had to be distributed on foot. Foot soldiers put the food rations on their heads and went down deeper into the informal settlement. That was a wake-up call. And after the pandemic, we realized that we do not have an institutional governance mechanism for risk in the urban. The current system is based under the office of the Prime Minister, and it is responsive to the areas really outside of the cities, the urban areas. So it happens in districts, in rural areas. But the impact of that is that all the people affected by these natural hazards in the rural areas will find place in the urban, hoping that this is an opportunity to flee and come to the urban for a better life. But then again, they will be faced with the need to carry water, find public health services, and so many other things that affect their lives. So it has come to us now that we need to put in place an institutional framework to mainstream risk planning and management in the urban sector. It is not there. If we had, for instance, a risk response center at all municipal levels like you do, we would be able to coordinate together with the response services of OPM and the health services to reach the population. But that was not there. So these other government entities would come into the urban space and operate without guidance, without maps, without finding the right location. So that was a lesson learned. And on the backdrop of that, we received also an invitation to join the MCR 2030 initiative, which we took on very, very fast. Because this was an opportunity, once again, to drum those bells to build resilience in the cities. And today we have the Ministry of Lands on the dashboard and 5 other cities. Some of them are really not strategic or regional cities, but they have been affected by the impacts of natural hazards surrounding their urban centers. So with those 5, we are calling for more, and it's a daily call of action to get these cities to register to be visible on this dashboard, to be able to learn how to build resilience, use the tools and technical skills available by other partners to build resilience, because the risk is there. It is imminent, but how do we start to deal with it? Like Emmanuel said, it's unique. Not one approach would work for all. These are 10 regional cities spread across 241 square kilometers of land. So the risk of fire may be imminent in one city, but the risk of flooding is more imminent in another. So if we want to continue to build policy tools that will guide interventions on disaster management in the urban, I would like to state my position on the urban, because we are trying to mainstream the risk management and risk reduction in all sectors of government. But we know that in the urban areas it is going to grow rapidly, and that the response must be responsive to the nature and the character of the urban system. We also need information. It's true. Information is what will give us the appropriate response measure to deal with these areas. And then we will link back to the local governments and say, look, as a regional city, you have other sub-regional areas that affect you. So we need to have territorial planning to ensure that that risk is minimized, so that we don't have the influx always in the urban areas. Our main task as the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development is to support all local governments with the right policy, the right standards, and we have not yet started that. We call upon the partners here to support us, to come up with those resilience standards, to come up with the right tools to support the local government. We're here to ask for help. We're here to ensure that we're not left behind, because as a country, we recognize that there's so much that needs to be done, but we need the foot soldiers as well. So as partners in this conference, some of us have had the good stories and work that you have done. Resilience is built by communities, both international and local. If we build resilience across our country and continents, we shall all be able to achieve sustainable development, and especially sustainable development for the communities in the urban sector. Thank you very much.
Mr. Moderator, for your words and presentation. And now let me please introduce you to our representative of Medellin, Colombia, MCR 2030.
Thank you to all of you, and good afternoon. My name is Walter Perez, Deputy Director of Disaster Waste Reduction in Medellin, Colombia. I want to show you a video. Next, please. I want to show all of you Medellin, the location of Medellin and the people.
The well-being of the planet is the greatest challenge of our society, and its care is essential for all forms of life. Medellin's Future Development Plan is the most ambitious program that the city has had in recent decades. Our Climate Action Plan traces the route for the climate transition, and in it the city commits to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and to be a carbon-neutral city by 2050. Resilient to the impacts of the climate crisis and with an equitable distribution of the benefits generated by the local agenda, the future of Medellin is conceived as an eco-city, that is, as a space open to life, care for the environment, and inclusion. A city that advances towards the construction of a new development model that responds to the context of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the consequent generation of new social and economic dynamics. Likewise, the new generations are increasingly aware of the effects of our habits. Today, eco-citizens are interested in getting around by bicycle or planting a native tree as a family to celebrate a special event. And all this because we know that having more sustainable daily practices is no longer a minor issue. Because the future depends on the collective and individual effort to take care of our common home. The evidence of climate change is becoming increasingly indisputable, and the looming crisis with impacts on biodiversity, livelihoods, infrastructure, and economic growth is becoming more noticeable. This phenomenon represents growing challenges for humanity, and its overcoming requires the joint effort of all the peoples and nations of the world.
This is the location of Medellin in Colombia. We are in the north of South America, the province of Antioquia. We have 125 municipalities. Medellin is the second most important city of the country for its population, area, and economic development. It's the only city in the country with have all metro lines, integrated transportation system with metro cable or gondolas, articulated natural gas and electric buses. So we have 16 communes. We have a great space to work and development, but we have some difficulties. The area is a narrow valley surrounded by mountains. This geomorphology poses challenge for for disaster risk reduction. In addition to that, uncontrolled construction of houses on the highest slopes of the city. Next, please. Follow up a little bit. We have 4,200 slopes, 400, I would say, riders, 4,200 watersheds in Medellin. That supposes a big problem for us to attend to the community. Some of them have 700 watersheds with a permanent flow, of which more than 500 have their own name. The most relevant disaster of the last 7 years in Medellin was a great difficult for us, to landslides, floods, and loss of lives in Medellin. Some of them, the next week. No, next. Okay. This is one of Gabriel Garcia Marquez when a photographer take that picture that was in Medellin. I want to show you some of these pictures just for illustrative what kind of problems do we have in Medellin. Next. This is in Villatina neighborhood. Approximately 500 people died in landslide in Medellin. We have a team of engineers that carry out inspections due to risk and generate definitive or temporary evacuations, achieving risk reduction and saving lives in time. Next. That was in another kind of place in Medellin. Another. Next. So we are working to have a monitoring some of the watersheds with the strongest flow in Medellin, with early warning systems at the service of the community. That instrumentation in watersheds save lives. Yeah? We're installing technology in the driver to save lives. This is the way it works. A rain gauge, level sensor, and the downstream alarm are installed to provide early warning to the community of sudden river floods. This kind of technology saves lives. We work together with the people, with the community, academia, and technology. This is like, we have a video here. Okay. This is the way to work. It's raining, you have a blumeter system, alarm, and the people go outside the houses. This is a social work in the communities. Our goal is to take more of that kind of technology in the city because they work to us to save lives in our territory. Another one we have is international cooperation to project with the government of Germany. We are implementing the use of technology for knowledge and risk analysis of the slopes of Medellin in one of the neighborhoods most affected by landslides. We work in eco-city, eco-citizens. We are working with sustainable development goals that our government plans aims to implement. We are working in 3 lines: risk knowledge, risk reduction, and disaster management. These are another lines, each one: risk scenario characterization, risk analysis, and another one: risk reduction, corrective intervention, prospective intervention, and financial protection, and disaster management too. This is kind of risk scenarios in Medellin. We have a lot of scenarios. It's our team, technical team. We work together with a social team in Colombia and Medellin. I want to forward again because my time is closing. Okay. We are the 4th city in South America have a recognition of MCR 2030 residence hub. As December 2021, Medellin becomes our disaster risk resilience hub. We began a process of mentoring and accompanying other cities in the search for this recognition. Thank you, Terima kasih, I think. Gracias
to Mr. Perez, also Mr. Nielsen, Mr. Hayashi, Araujo, also Ms. Mugarura, for your stories and for sharing your learnings. Thank you all of you. Now we will have a 5-minute break. It's only 5 minutes. Go out, grab the coffee, some water, spread your legs. There's no time to go to the beach. We will reconvene in 5 minutes and continue to have many more stories from Italy, from Iran, from Japan, and many more. So we continue just 3 minutes.